Hi everybody. How's everybody doing today? I hope it's well. So we're gonna get started here. If you don't mind, if you aren't muted for the first part of the talk here, if you don't mind clicking on the little microphone at the top, that will mute you just to kind of prevent a little bit of background noise if we encounter any. So thank you so much for joining us today for our Real Life with CF panel discussion. My name's Brian, and tonight I'm very excited to be joined by both Heather, Kirsten, and RJ. We all live with CF, and tonight we plan on sharing a few of our life experiences with you. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over a couple items related to the Teams technology, as some people might not be used to it. So we'll be taking audience questions at the end of the session. So if you do have a question, please submit it at any time by using the chat icon at the top of the screen. It might look a little bit like a couple of pillows or clouds up there. And you can, type in your chat and send it through, and we'll be taking a look at those. We can also see other questions. If you see them and you like them, give them a thumbs up so we know that this is potentially a question we'd like to, prioritize. My great assistant Jenny here will be monitoring the chats and reviewing and passing along these questions to me to bring to discussion with the other members here who are joining me today. If time allows at the end, we will open up for some audience members to join us if you want to via video to ask a question live. And to place the video on, you can, click the little thing that looks like a video camera. And if you would like to participate in that, there's a little face with a hand, and you can click the hand that says raise hand, and we will see that and try to, expedite finding you to seek out your question. But again, please don't hesitate at any time to type in a question for us. And so we do have a couple questions prepared that we're going to go through here first, just to get the conversation rolling. But before we do that, I would like to, ask my fellow participants here to tell us a little bit about themselves. I'm going to start here with Heather, if you don't mind, Heather. And Heather will move on to some intros from both Kirsten, RJ, and then I will finish it off. So take it away, Heather.
Are you on just listening? Hi, my name is Heather Hunter. I am 38 years old, and I was diagnosed with CF at 3 months. In 2016, I had a double lung transplant, and I'm coming up on 5 years of celebration for that. And I waited 3.5 years for it. The next journey is getting a kidney, which I have a donor that matches, and that should be in the next 2 years. I waitress at a bar in town, and that's pretty much my life.
Thanks, Heather. Kirsten, if you want to take it away next for us here.
Sure thing. My name is Kirsten Michelle Sills. I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I just turned 27 years old, and I have cystic fibrosis. I was diagnosed at age 7 and by my doctors at St. Christopher's Hospital for Children in Philadelphia. And I am a professional actor and stand-up comic. I work on a sitcom that's going to be airing in the spring about life with cystic fibrosis called Terminally Chill. And that's how I've been getting more heavily involved with the CF Foundation. And I am super happy to be here. And I will pass it over to RJ.
Hey, everybody, I made it. Hi, everyone. My name is RJ Thompson. I am 36 years old. I was diagnosed at the brink of death at 4 months old. So I'm glad that, doctors figured it out. I'm really excited to talk with these folks today and share a lot about my experiences. I live in Pittsburgh. I decided to move closer to my doctors, so that would create some benefits having them so close. But I've been in Pittsburgh since 2003, and looking down the list here, I see a lot of folks that I recognize. So it's good to be in the community and with close friends.
Awesome, thank you, RJ. Thank you. So my name's Brian. I was diagnosed at 3 months old with cystic fibrosis. I am currently 30, going on 31. I will be turning 31 in the beginning of September. I am a pharmacist by profession at a hospital here in Pittsburgh. I've been doing that for quite a while now. My life has been full of, interesting ups and downs, both with CF and in many other ways. And I'm super excited to join everybody here to talk about, how we all have, dealt with our illness in different ways, experienced different things, and how, such one thing like CF can cause so many different, things to come out of it. Being a comedian, being a pharmacist, and I'm sure we all have, interesting stories to share. So I'm really excited to hear from all my fellow participants here and share my story and, field some hopefully awesome questions from our guests. So we're going to start off with a couple of questions that we've prepared here, and just to get things rolling to see, how we all might answer some interesting, we felt questions. And our first one is that I'm going to pose to our group here is, how has CF helped or hindered the way that you handle other adverse events that come up in your life?
I defer. No? Everyone's, oh.
I can start. Yeah, I have no problem starting off. So I think for me, being born with a chronic disease, in many ways has changed like my perception on a lot of things. Every day I think we deal with things like treatments and making sure we're always, on time and on schedule to keep ourselves healthy. We were talking a little bit before this about the pills that we are required to take every day. So I would say that having CF has really helped me to deal a lot with other adversities in my life, be it through school, be it through any type of relationship I've ever had, in terms of trying to handle things that are difficult. I think having a disease for me has always been something that I haven't viewed as really like a burden, but viewed it more as something that helped shape me into the person I am today. As I mentioned, I am a pharmacist, and somewhat of that is based in one, my father is a pharmacist, and I always looked up to him, but also, it helped me make decisions in my life because I wanted to learn more about the medications I was taking. I was always interested in this. And whenever, it comes to dealing with difficult things, I just see the way that I've always been able to kind of deal with my disease as a way to help guide me to make the right decision and to, come to the right conclusion in terms of how I want to handle that. I don't know if anybody else has any similar type or in similar types of experiences to me.
Yeah, I think I certainly echo that. I think for me, the biggest effect that being chronically ill my whole life has had on me is probably that I'm not a big planner as far as like looking, if I'm someone who's going to be scheduling a vacation, I don't typically do it more than a few months out because you never know how you're going to be feeling then. You never know what's going to be going on in your life then, which is a tough thing, but also a good thing because I feel like, not to sound very cliche, but it is something that kind of really helps you enjoy the moment that you are living in. And I also think, I will say, having CF is one of the things that I attribute my career to as a stand-up comic, because as a child, I grew up in the hospital like most of us do, and with very, very extended stays very often. And as someone I think you can all agree, as a sick child, you don't really have the same sleep schedule a normal child who is healthy does. And then I would be in the hospital sleeping all day and then sort of be awake all night. And all my friends are in school. I don't really have anyone to talk to when I'm awake. And I started getting, at a really young age, really into late night comedy. And because it was the only thing that I could watch as a kid, there wasn't like children's shows on at that time. And that was a really big, really influential factor in my career. And I don't imagine, maybe I would have always had an interest even if I didn't have CF and I didn't live the life I lived, but I can't imagine that I would have gotten into this career field if it weren't for growing up stuck in a room, you know, as a performer and as a comedian. So I will always be grateful for that.
There we go. Heather, you want to go?
So, I mean, I definitely agree with everything that's been said so far. I guess my thing is more of a hinder is had I known when I was born and they were telling you, you know, you're not gonna, you'll see kindergarten, you won't get to this age, you won't get to this age, and being that I'm turning 38, I think I would have some different career choices, some different plans along the way. Not that I had known, I mean, because there was no way to know. But I mean, we just kind of live with what we're given, and we kind of make the best of it. And you know, I'm still alive, and I survived the transplant, and just kind of enjoying life now. But to go, I mean, if you had that chance to go back and rewind, I think I would do some things a little different.
Yeah, Heather, a lot of what, I mean, frankly, what a lot of you have been saying, I relate to. I actually have a hard time answering this question because I've always taken the approach of never letting CF stop me or slow me down. Yeah, there are times like when you're sick, when that just, it's forced on you. You got to slow down. But in terms of you know, what I've wanted to do with my life, I have not let it stop me. I've not let it slow me down. And you know, I also say that as coming from a place of, I think, extreme luck, if not some kind of privilege, where, you know, I'm very aware that, like, I've never been hospitalized. My lived experience is completely different from the three of you, perhaps on that point alone. And so I'm always aware of that, especially when talking with other CF folks. It makes me feel guilty in some way, perhaps in some weird twisted way, but I've never let it stop me. And as I told some you know, new doctors earlier today, along with Brian, because of the advances in the medicine and technology, I've been able to live a lot of my dreams and actually experience some dreams that I didn't think I had. And I'm eternally extremely grateful for that. And I would say that being able to have those experiences, even, you know, being able to become a father, which is, for especially I think with someone with CF, a very profound and transformative experience. But I would say that CF has helped me develop a very specific and strong willpower. If you ask my wife, it's stubbornness, but willpower and discipline, and a very how do I put this? Just a willingness to not stop or slow down. And I'm actually kind of grateful for that, because that is a part of who I am as a person. And I don't think that CF is necessarily the condition that changed that or created it, but it is something that I think about.
Yeah, I think kind of what RJ just, you know, spoke to is what we're really conveying here with this talk, is how different some of our lives have been. But, you know, we all have CF, but the journeys that we've taken with it are so unique and so individual. And I think he kind of touched on this second question we have here with what he was just talking about there, on the question being, how have you taken care of your mental and emotional health? You know, having a chronic disease, we often struggle with different things in different stages. So how have any of my fellow panelists, you know, taken care of their mental and emotional health in times when perhaps it wasn't the best day for you, or you were in the hospital, or you were finding out news you didn't want to hear, or you were in a different way than you were than you are now. So if anybody wants to take a stab at that one.
So I can continue my thought here, and then I'll kindly pass it off. But I think there were two very real experiences that I had that reflected my mental and emotional state. The first of which was when I took essentially really integrated into the Trikafta path. And that medication basically just stopped mucus production. Like, I just stopped coughing mucus out. And it's been like that ever since I've started the medication. And that burden being lifted off of your lungs, right, is profound. It was real. It was a real release. So, that improved my outlook on my illness, on my mortality, and it improved so many other things, that relationships with people, relationships to the environment, and being able to participate in community and culture. And then the second part was I'm a part of the percentage, the demographic of men that can't conceive naturally, and I decided that my wife and I decided that CF wasn't going to stop us, and we decided to do IVF, and our daughter was, an IVF baby, the first time, perfectly successful. And the surgery was something else for me, but nevertheless, like, for me, that was that was like tearing the barrier down. That was like the last barrier. And like, once we decided to have a kid, and it's like, CF, there's nothing that this disease will throw at me that can stop me. So I feel pretty good about my present state, and the state of my life. But those were two very emotional and mentally sort of releasing things for me.
I can go next. I would say, as far as my mental health is concerned, I've certainly always struggled with mental health my whole life, especially growing up in a hospital, or when not in a hospital, still in a situation where I was not able to go out a lot. I was always sort of a sick kid. I always joke, I was an indoor kid. I didn't really do a lot of outdoor things. And I did always struggle in that sense, because, I hear my generation loves to use the term like FOMO, being the fear of missing out, seeing your friends on social media doing things that you weren't invited to, or you were busy and you couldn't. And I think that was a term that the first time I heard it in, I don't know, I guess my late teens, I remember being like, that's what it is that I've been dealing with my entire life, which is, before there was even a word for it, before there even was social media, was the inability to be physically present at things, which I think has certainly helped me now during this lockdown, because this has just been business as usual for me. And now there is all these abilities to be involved with people without being physically there, and that's wonderful. I think another thing that I struggle with my mental health is the fact that having a disease that you can't necessarily see on a person is hard. You call it an invisible illness. And as someone who sometimes I look really sick, I'm often on portable oxygen. I often have a PICC line in my arm, and then I often don't. And I walk around looking completely healthy and normal, and you'd have no idea. And I think the amount of patience that you get from the world when you look sicker versus when you don't, even though I am always my body hasn't changed. It's just the visual aid that helps people understand my situation. That's always been a little hard for me to work with, as far as my mental health, of being sort of treated differently depending on the month, people who I know and who I've met socially and then meet me again and I'm on oxygen, or meet me again and then I'm not. That's been harder the older I get, just sort of grappling with the idea of whether it's obvious or not that I'm not feeling well. I have to sort of put that aside and recognize that even if I'm not feeling well, it is physically, it's awful and it is a bummer, but it is nobody else's problem. And my mom always said to me when I was a kid, like, I think every mom has that one thing they always say. And my mom always used to say, the way we treat each other is everything. And that's something that always has sort of stuck with me, is that when it comes to the way that you're feeling internally, whether you hear people be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm tired. I don't mean to be rude to you. I'm in a bad mood. I'm not feeling well, whatever it may be. I think I've sort of come to the conclusion that no matter how I'm feeling, it's really important to me to make sure that others aren't, that I'm not taking that out on other people. And I think the realization of that, which took, I wish I had maybe realized it when I was 13, but better late than never, has been really sort of transformative, and the way that I treat my mental health and the way that I treat others. Because I certainly was not a pleasant child to the nurses in my children's hospital when I was a kid. So sort of growing up and seeing the ways that I can still use kindness and like support other people even when I'm not feeling a certain way has been really wonderful. And that's it.
I would say for me, the biggest thing I can point to for mental health for me came, kind of with the use of, as RJ had mentioned, Trikafta, the initiation for me. I was at the time still being considered and evaluated for lung transplant yearly. So the timing came where I was granted compassionate use for the drug. And, I just started it like basically right before my birthday, sometime in August. And then all of a sudden, as he had kind of mentioned here too, the effect that had on just helping me on a daily basis with clearance and improvement of my lung function, to the point where I was removed from consideration for the transplant. And then it kind of took a strange turn, and a crazy disease called COVID came around, and all of a sudden I was thinking about how I had all of a sudden been cleared, and then a disease hits the nation that in moments I felt like could affect me in a way that would be very adverse. So it's kind of a mental, emotional roller coaster that I dealt with there at that point in time. But that was kind of the biggest thing to point to for me. I didn't know if Heather, maybe did you have anything additional to share on the question for us?
Not really. I think it's, I touched base with everybody, how everybody has said everything. And I used to, when I was younger, to deal with the emotional, I would just the money that I didn't have, and then I'd work my butt off to make it even more, just because I thought those kind of things would make me feel better. And as I've gotten older, I've learned that's not the correct way to deal with things. And my new way of dealing is I just walk. Like, especially since having transplant, like I just make sure that every day is like my daily, I go for a walk at least. And it just helps you clear your mind. And obviously exercise is good for you as well, but it's just to refocus on the day and really value what's important to you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody's input on that. And so kind of as I had spoken to a little bit about COVID, I know a lot of our community was, everyone was obviously very affected by the coronavirus and everything that came around with that. But I think that there was, even more of a scare for a community that suffers from a chronic illness like we do, and especially one that is centered within the lungs, which is where the coronavirus typically tends to attack. So the question would be, would anybody be able to provide any kind of details of how, like, your risk assessment during COVID-19 changed, like maybe how your life changed, what may have changed, any type of adaptations you might have had to make, or any major type of changes that came about because of such an illness?
Yeah, I can speak to that from my point of view, living in a major city, which I know a lot of us do, and every city sort of had its own moment where it was the hub for COVID and the big place to not be. And like I said, I live in Philadelphia, and I had March 2020, I moved to Philadelphia. I was living in the suburbs in a big house with a lot of space. And then I said, I want to move into the city, and I'm willing to sort of, downgrade my boyfriend and I, because it meant we were able to be in the city and have the nightlife and have the everything. And then we moved there March 1st of 2020. And so that was a bit rough. And in hindsight, who could have guessed that would have happened, but sort of meant that I was then really sort of cooped up in this, 600 square foot apartment for, 18 months. And I think of course, not only myself, but my partner and I, neither of us were able to really leave the house. My parents were going to the grocery store for us and buying our groceries for months and months. And of course, just had to be very vigilant, couldn't see anybody, even if it was socially distanced. We weren't able to take that risk. And having my, pulmonologists sort of saying to me, obviously this is a dangerous disease for anybody, but if you get this, it could be very, very detrimental. So you really need to be careful. So luckily, everybody in my life was very precautious about me and very worried about me, and making sure that everyone was helping out and dropping things off for me in any way they could. But then in December of last year, so last December, I did leave the house and see some of my family, and I got COVID. And it was very, very, very scary, of course. I got the test done, and my doctor called me in a panic, and she just said, you need to go to the ER right now, and you need to tell them you have cystic fibrosis and you need to get started on remdesivir. And I didn't really even have any symptoms yet, but she was like, you have to, begin this process now. And I went to the hospital, and they were incredibly, as soon as I said I had CF, they knew exactly that I needed to be seen right away. And I was very lucky. I did the 7-day course of the COVID medicine. I did get pretty sick, but I wouldn't say that it made my lungs any worse than a typical flare up. I didn't feel like something I wasn't familiar with. It was still very awful, and I can see how anybody without cystic fibrosis who's never experienced this before would be absolutely terrified to not be able to breathe. But it was very tough. I will say, my lung function since then has not been what it was. It's getting better for sure, but that was in December, and this is now August of, the following year. So things are getting better, but it was very difficult. But I was very lucky to have doctors who were immediately jumping into action when they saw, even people who are not pulmonologists, just nurses, anybody at the hospital were so willing to help. So the precautions were very difficult. And then, of course, the one time I said, I think I'll be okay, I was not. But now I'm double vaxxed, and we'll be getting the booster soon. And yeah, if anybody else has any experience they want to share.
I can go. How long were you hospitalized for, Kirsten? Was it a significant amount of time?
I would say it was a couple of days before the medicine, the 7-day course, and a couple of days after. So I would say about 10 days I was there. They were very quick to say, as long as you do not need oxygen right now, we gotta, they needed the bed. So, and I was very happy to be released. Usually, as a lot of people with CF know who've been in the hospital, it's hard to get them to let you leave, as opposed to this was giving me the boot. And yeah, I would say I wasn't there for too long, but again, it was a very different hospital stay because nobody's coming in your room unless it's an emergency. So a lot of one-on-one time with myself.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. I can only imagine. So for me, I'll just go real quick here. I work in a hospital, so my daily life was pretty chaotic at the beginning. The whole unknown about what could happen, what would happen if I contracted something like this, while also, still having the responsibility that I took to go to work and to care for patients. It was a very difficult time to struggle, with my profession being what it is, and with my condition being what it is, to kind of wrap my head around what was best for me. I have ultimately, been back to work for quite a long time in the hospital, and it's still not the most settling place to work at times. You still have that lingering fear. I have also, been vaccinated for a very long time, and look forward to receiving the booster whenever I can, and just trying to stay precautious, trying to continue habits of masking, which for me prevented me potentially from getting the flu this year. I can say that for the last 5 years I've gotten the flu. This year, last year I wore my mask basically every day, everywhere, didn't go outside, and surprise, I did not get the flu. So I guess, good things and bad things come out. I didn't really have a cold, and like a common cold or sick or anything like that until, a couple weeks ago when I got my first real, exacerbation post-COVID. So crazy things happen. It's been a crazy year, and I don't know if RJ or Heather, you have anything you'd like to add? Go ahead, RJ.
Yeah. So for me, my sort of self-imposed protocol here was I have to go out in public at times, not by virtue of my job, but just because I have to buy groceries or I have other family-related responsibilities I just have to take care of. So I knew that going out in the public throughout the pandemic was a foregone conclusion. What I could control about it, though, was when and where I went. And I generally have an issue with like Instacart and having things delivered to my house, especially if it's food. So, and I also don't like drive-throughs. So that was kind of a transition for me where I just had to go through the drive-through if we were getting something. But, I made it a point to choose very selective times when I went to buy things or if I needed something. I'd always have a mask on. I would generally be very guarded and keep my distance from everybody. I'd try not to take my daughter with me if it could be helped, but sometimes she'd have to come along, and she of course wants to run all through Target. So, fortunately we chose to do these things at very specific times that, I was able to avoid a lot of people. I wasn't afraid of getting COVID. Unfortunately, I never did, and still haven't. I have the inoculations and everything, but I wasn't afraid of it. I just kind of figured it would at some point be an eventuality. Fortunately, we haven't got there yet. So I tried to take a really objective and realistic perspective on it. My wife works in the library. She works with the public. Fortunately, I've been able to work from home, so that's helped mitigate a lot of exposure. But there were some things that I needed to do, like being cooped up in the house all the time. Like I just could not handle that, and I didn't want to ride the stationary bike anymore. So I'd go out on my bike, and having a mask on while you're riding a bike, not a great idea. So that didn't stick. So there were times where like I just had to forego it. I would just say an abundance of caution and monitoring the exposure count, the case counts in the county, and staying in when I could. Heather, any thoughts?
So I guess my thoughts were the same, still with being cautious, but kind of took a different approach and just kept living. For the first 2 months or so, my husband did all the grocery shopping, so we did like do that as a precaution and just stayed inside. And then we did go to Mexico in 2020 because the travel was fabulous, and why not take advantage of it? I did go back to work, and being immunosuppressed, I should probably be a little bit more cautious. But we're just kind of living, and I mean, I'm cautious to a certain point, but I'm also still living life as best as I can. Not that I mean, I'm not making light of the situation, but I mean, to each their own, and sometimes you just have to go out.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for sharing those experiences. I know that, not only did people with CF have to make significant changes with their life, but, basically everybody's had to make some type of, it seems like, change of whatever that might be. So hopefully, going forward, we see what this all brings to us, these variants and everything that seems to be popping up, and hopefully, stays under control, and we can continue to be cautiously optimistic, we'll say. So the next question will kind of deal with digging into some lessons that we have learned from having CF. So what that will be, and I pose to my fellow panelists here, would be, what are your top 3 lessons for families or friends of those who have cystic fibrosis?
That's a tough one. Top 3.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So
I could give one, maybe. Oh, go ahead, Heather. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would say if I had to give like maybe one for family and friends that everybody who has become close with me has had to learn the hard way is never be surprised by a sickness that wasn't there 2 hours ago, because the speed in which I get sick is, I will be at the middle of a shift at work and I'll be like, oh my God, I have a fever all of a sudden. It's like, no, you were just fine. And I'm like, I know, it's crazy. That's one I would say is, expect the unexpected.
Very true. I would just add to that like, even though that we have CF, we're no different than any other person. Like, just treat us all the same. Sometimes we can't make it to things. And like you said, sometimes things are unexpected and it comes up. It's not that we want to cancel because we just don't feel like it. Sometimes things happen and we have to cancel just to maintain everything for us and to be better for us. That's all I have for right now.
That's a great one.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I always say I would rather, whenever I have to miss something, I'm always like, I would so much rather be there than be sick. It's not on me, I promise. I would rather.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one for me as well. I'm thinking of like all the different cumulative life experiences that I've had with people in relating to my CF. And I think especially for family, like if I haven't seen you in a while, like, yeah, not even that, but like, I think one thing I grew up having to deal with a lot was a lot of my extended family. The only thing they knew about me was that I had CF. They couldn't see it, but they knew it was there. And it's like, all right, would you just hurry up and get your questions out of the way? Because I am a fully multi-dimensional person with a lot of different interests and hobbies and thoughts and concerns and opinions. Ask me, let's talk literally about anything else except what I'm going through, because for you, it's a fleeting bit of data or information. For me, it's something that I am that exists at every single second of my life. So like, I am not the disease, right? So find something else in common with me to talk about. I've dealt with a lot of that. I also have gotten a lot of questions on my enzymes and things like that. And I think for family and friends, and certainly with this panel of folks here, I think if you were to ask any of us what our pills are, we would tell you honestly and completely, and we would tell you in such a way that it would encourage you to become an advocate. So it's one of those things where if you're genuinely curious and actually have a caring interest in learning about it, I think any of us or any of our class, so to speak, would tell you exactly what you need to know. And I've been been able to advocate for so many people with or without the disease, but they're somehow connected to it. Over my past, I don't know, what feels like going on 15 years of volunteering with the CF Foundation. I've been able to bring new people into the fold to events and create new points of exposure. And, for family and friends, like, I would say that you may feel like you're a part of a small community of people that have a connection to CF, but you're but one small community, a part of many bigger ones. And don't be afraid to reach out to those folks and build that community out. I grew up in a very rural area where I think I was one of 2 people with CF in the entire county out of tens of thousands of people. No one knew what my illness was. No one knew how to handle it. The doctors that I had up there were completely ineffective. And it wasn't until we started coming to Pittsburgh and having our doctors here that we realized we were part of a bigger community. And once we tapped into that community, we grew and learned so much more and were transformed by that experience. So I'd say the best lesson there is you're not alone. You just gotta reach out.
I mean, I think that's a wonderful way to put it, RJ. And I think that, the 4 of us here today, echo exactly what you're saying about we're all, just those people. We're not just people with CF, we're people. I might be filling your medication if you're hospitalized. Kirsten might be making you laugh, if you're watching a comedy show. Heather might be, your server. And, we have CF, but beyond just having CF, we're all people. We all, we're just like you. I mean, we might have some kind of defective chromosome that you don't have, but we are all still, important individuals, and, with our own stories, with our own hopes, with our own aspirations. And I think that's really, at the heart of who we are, at the heart of what drives us, to be people, not only people dealing with a chronic disease, but dealing with life every day, going through our lives, going to our job, doing our work, showing up, making a sitcom, everybody's unique. And just, talk. We love to talk about, we would, as RJ said, we would be, most of us here, I seemingly would be more than open to speak with you about our disease if you have questions. But, we're also more than happy to talk to you about, the Pirates being awful, or if, the Phillies are playing.
Not talking about the Pirates.
Sorry, we don't talk about the Pirates. I mean, I will. I mean, they're just terrible. But, we're here every day. I mean, we're the people in your community along there with you. And I think that's something really important to pass on to anybody, And so we'll finish off our, questions that we have set out with one last question. So with CF in the foundation specifically, we hear a lot about until it's done. So to you, as people with CF, what does the phrase until it's done mean to you in terms of, be it your disease, in terms of, be it CF in general, just any thoughts on what that phrase at its core being means to you?
I have thoughts here, but I'll defer.
You can go ahead if you have thoughts. I'm still formulating. So.
Okay. So until it's done, I mean, you can make the connection, like, until, you know, CF is cure found, right? But I think for me, what it really means is that, and I don't think it ends. So I'm butchering it. I wish I could be more articulate here, but I think for me, what until it's done means, it's more of an expression of living beyond the illness. So I think a lot of what we've spoken about is we're multidimensional people. We are not defined. Some of our illness and our life conditions define us, but the disease itself does not fully define us. And I think for me, until it's done is more of a mission statement towards life. Like, you know, when you feel you're done, then you can rest. And for me, it's like, I'm not done. I've got so much more living to do. I've got so many more things that I want to do. I know that I can, that I'm not stopping. So until it's done, you know, yeah, maybe I'll get to that point. So I think it's like this destination that keeps moving farther and farther away. So I think for me, I'm looking at it inversely, or at least internally, and it's more of a motivational statement to get to the next thing. This thing's done. Let's move to the next. Let's move to the next. And yeah, that does sound exhausting, but it's better than not being able to do it. So until it's done could either be this long or it could be this long. So that's just my perspective on it.
You nailed it. Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't want to echo everything you just said, but yeah, I think it has less to do with, you know, it being done and have more to do with, you know, the fact that you can just decide to never be done, you know.
So I was talking to some doctors today, and I'm sorry to interrupt, Heather, real quick, but I basically said to them, like, you know, and Heather, you can relate to this completely. So like when we were growing up, because we're very close in age, you know, we were used to having like, yeah, you're not going to live to see 40, or not that was literally what was said, but you're not going to live to see this, or you're not going to be able to do this and this and this. And I told these doctors today, I'm like, this Trikafta stuff you guys gave me, like, I'm going to live to be 1,000 years old. I've got at least another 970 some odd years to go. Like, and even then I won't be done with what I want to do with life. So I think that's an amusing anecdote for what happened earlier. But go ahead, Heather. I'm sorry.
So I really like how RJ likes, you know, going until each person is done. But I think we also have to remember that Trikafta was a huge improvement for like 90% of the CF population. But we still need to remember the other 10%. We still need to remember the ones that, like in my case, Trikafta came out too late. The damage was already done to my lungs. I had to get a lung transplant. So we need to remember like all of the older crowd too that are still living beyond what we were told we could live, but the damage has been done. So the transplants that still need to happen, encouraging people to be donors, and just kind of remembering everybody in the CF community that have different aspirations, that different, you know, until it's done for everybody, so nobody gets left behind.
Well put. Agreed completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Again, thanks all three of you for sharing your perspective and thoughts. I think that's, you know, something that is, you know, unique again for all of us. So we do have, that's the end of our, you know, scripted style questions. So we do have a couple of questions in the chat that I'm going to read out, and we can try to take those up here in the last few minutes of such, if we're okay with that. So I have a question from Lauren. So her question is, I talk to a lot of teens and they aren't always so open about their CF, and they are always dealing with everything that comes with being a teen. I know I can, and I'm sure all of us can, remember the awkward moments of being a teenager. So what kind of advice would you give your teenage self if you were able to do that now, or a local teen that might be struggling with a disease like cystic fibrosis?
I think I would say, it's hard because obviously I'm no longer a teenager, but I am just about 3 years out of college, and I still so vividly remember being a teenager, especially the young teenage years, like 13, 14, and just being so embarrassed about going to sleepovers and doing my vest and doing my nebs and all the pills I took, and like going into movie theaters and always having to cough, and everyone's like, well, it's silent, everyone's watching the movie and you can hear me breathing, and thinking it was not cute, and boys are going to think it's so gross. I'm always coughing up things. And I wish that, first of all, one of the main things I am excited about working on this sitcom is the opportunity for young people with CF to see that to see other people with CF portrayed on screen, because there really was none of that growing up. I just wish that someone had told me when I was a kid, like, it's not embarrassing. People are not paying nearly as much attention to it as you are. And everybody just wants you to feel okay. You don't have to hold your breath during a movie or a play because you don't want to cough. You can just be comfortable because the people around you, everybody there knows your situation. You don't have to hide it. And even the people who don't are not there to see you fail. And yeah, I think number one thing is I just wish I had been told at a young age, like, it's not embarrassing. It's okay,
So it's interesting you mentioned that, because that's kind of how I grew up. I never felt embarrassed or ashamed. Yeah, that coughing in the movie theater bit, like that, I can Star Wars Episode 3, like, I ruined it for people. But I didn't feel ashamed about that. Now, granted, I speak from a place of privilege because I was a fairly healthy teenager, especially in comparison to the three of you. And I was just raised like, these are your life circumstances. Deal with them. Be realistic about it. You don't owe anybody any explanation whatsoever. If they don't like it, they can get the hell out. And many people did, much to their detriment, because I'm a super cool dude. And they really lost out. But I did not waver from that. I walked a very straight line on that, very direct. And it benefited me because I would have to deal, sometimes I was a wrestler in high school, and I would have to deal with some folks that they're like, just saying stupid crap. And it's like, I've got a bigger bully I've got to deal with every day, more so than anything you can throw my way. So like, it was a very, I think in that sense, it was a really useful defense mechanism. And I actually I feel like I had a pretty great childhood and teenage years, just because I did not care about what the others thought, and I was able to move beyond and past it.
So for me, I was posed this question, like RJ said, today both of us spoke with some incoming medical school students at the University of Pittsburgh as well. And I was posed a similar question as to, when I was a teenager, did I rebel? Did I not do treatments? Did I decide I was too cool to deal with CF? And my answer to that was no. I always, followed the hard line of, if this is something I have to do to stay healthy and, live well beyond my teen years, this is something I'm going to do. If I have to, as Kirsten said, miss, a sleepover to do a breathing treatment, that's what's going to happen. Similar to RJ, I was also extremely healthy through my first, up teen years of life into college, where I played, baseball for the high school team. So I think that being open about CF was always something I was very open about. If anybody had any questions as to why I was coughing or why I had to take pills before I, throw down 10 enzymes before I eat my lunch, I was more than happy to explain to them like that this is what's going on. This is what's always going on. I always like to joke that I wish I would have started keeping track of the pills that I had taken when I was younger, because perhaps I'd be in the Guinness Book of World Records by this point. You throw back enough enzymes, you gotta chart those up to something. But for me as a teen, CF was never, it was part of my life, but it was never who I was. I mean, I was in school plays, I was on the baseball team, I was out there, I didn't run track, I threw the shot put. I don't really look like I could have done that now, I'm pretty small, but I did. So I was out there participating with everybody, and if anybody had any questions, if I had to miss school because I was sick, I was more than happy to tell people why. I was very open all the time, and I think that being raised the way I was attributed to that, because my parents never taught me to be any different. My parents always treated me exactly the same as my sister, who does not have CF. We would go to Europe when I was younger. We would go on vacations when I was younger, just like every other kid. My parents would do chest PT on me. We would bring the vest. I always like to joke that TSA is my best friend, because when I travel, they really enjoy looking at all of my medical devices. But it's just something I've learned to live with, I've learned to love, and I've learned to deal with. So for me, my advice would just be, continue being you, push for who you are, and just, with that, keep in the back of your mind that to continue to be who you are and continue to be so successful, sometimes, putting things off or making time for your health is a very important part of or aspect of that. I think we lost Heather for a second. Heather, are you back?
She's back.
Awesome.
I'm back. I don't know what I did.
I was gonna say, we lost you there for a second.
And then I'm back.
Would you like to add anything for the question, Heather? Or do you want me to repeat the question at all for you, or?
No, you're good.
Okay.
So I was more quiet during my teen years. Like friends and family knew, but it wasn't something I offered up as like a explanation to anybody. I just kind of kept it to myself. And then as I got older, I just didn't care who knew. So I agree with everything you guys have all said. It's just better to be who you are. Don't try to hide it. There's others like you, and quite frankly, it's nobody's business but your own, unless you choose to share it.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. So the other question we have here in the chat, so RJ and I have spoke a little bit about our experiences with Trikafta. Kirsten, I don't know if you have any experience with any of the modulators, and Heather, I know that you spoke to transplant and such, so I guess mainly Kirsten, if you would like to talk at all about any effect of any of the new drugs or modulators.
Yes, so I am unfortunately in the 10% that does not qualify for Trikafta, but I have heard nothing but amazing things about it. People always come to me and are like, have you heard? And I'm like, it doesn't apply to me, but it's so cool. Yeah, and it's so awesome to hear that it has been so effective for you people. Obviously, I don't know a lot of people in person with CF, obviously. I don't know a lot of people in general with CF, so it's cool to hear, other than just hearing from my doctor, but hearing real life experiences.
Even though I transplanted, I do take Trikafta as well for my sinuses.
Oh, thank you.
And it cleared my sinuses up within 4 days.
Wow.
And has kept it clear.
Well, that's awesome. That's always helpful. Yeah, I mean, like we stated before, and Heather kind of echoed in her answer to the until it's done question, we're all pushing for, until we get that drug for the 10%, and in this case represented by you, Kirsten. So we hope, something comes out fairly soon at some point to help, all of us that have CF, all of us. Because I can, to your point, remember when the first ever, single modulator ivacaftor came out, and people who knew I had CF and people who I went to pharmacy school with that knew I had CF and were, up a little bit on the drug lingo, were like, oh, is this drug going to work for you? And I'm like, no, it won't. it's really not going to do very much for me at all at this point. I need a little bit more help. So I think that, we'll just hopefully keep pushing more and more and researching more and more and finding out more and more. And it's just helpful to know that, that drug is available for so many people. And it seems like the foundation in combination with, Vertex is really committed. So that's always great.
This is actually a good question. Are any of you participating in any type of research trials or medicinal trials, etc.?
When I was a kid, I'd have to check with my mom about this because obviously I've only been in like the adult CF center for a couple of years now. But when I was a kid, I know I was involved in like the like when Toby came out, I remember being involved in that trial and everything. But I don't think I don't, not to my knowledge in my adult life, have I been involved in any of those.
This is Kirsten's mom. She was actually in the Pulmozyme trial as well.
Pulmozyme.
Thanks, Mom. I won't even have to text her.
Hi, Kirsten's mom.
Thanks, Mom.
Brian, were you ever on trials?
I've been on a few. I was on one early Vertex trial. I don't know if I was a placebo or whatever I was taking. I'm on a trial most of the trial that I'm in now is more of like care related versus medicine related. So I'm in a trial with the center that looks at, people with advanced lung disease and if doing full PFTs more often, 6-minute walk, and other things as part of a clinic visit will help to better predict any types of flows or exacerbations. So I'm in that trial currently. I did a couple other trials when I was younger as well. I know I did one for a device that you used at home to measure pulmonary function that transmitted via your old dial-up line for all of those who love the beep, beep, beep. Yeah, that great sound. I remember I was in one with that. But the only drug trial I was ever in was a Vertex trial where it was basically just testing if ivacaftor had any effect on people with most common genotype. And I don't ultimately know, placebo versus, drug what I was on, but I also never really looked into the results. But that was the only drug trial I've ever been in. It's kind of cool experience though.
Yeah, I've been doing them ever since I was a teenager. I've been in, I don't know, several dozen over the years, ranging from devices to, medications to, I don't know. I'm in one now called Photo Voice, which is it's more therapeutic than anything, but it's still pretty cool. But I consider it an honor and a privilege to be able to participate in those when I can. I can't participate in many of them because I exceed the parameters health-wise. But the ones that I can participate in, I really try in earnest to do. I've always had a good experience. I actually like talking about the experiences of being in research trials, right? Especially when you're under you're getting, there was one I was in a couple years ago where I was in an MRI machine or something like that. And on the ceiling, if Dr. Paluski's in the room, you know what I'm talking about. On the ceiling, there was like a panel of TVs and it was just like this really very somber, peaceful nature scene. And I had to sit there in this cocoon thing for hours on end. And I would start to really inspect the details of the video to see how long it takes to loop. And, come around hour 3, oh, there's the fly again. Is it going to land on a stick? Oh, it does. So, yeah. And then the one time I had these little tiny tubes shoved all the way up my nose. And yeah, it grosses people out and it's hilarious. So I do it for, for the true purpose, but also for the stories. And it gets me out of work.
Heather, anything to add? for studies or such that you'd like to throw out there?
So the studies, I mean, they're always coming at you with trying to get you into a study. It's always, let's do this and let's do that. How about this one? So I've been involved in quite a few. The only one I really remember was prior to transplant, I did the orgamby for people with lower lung function. And it ended up having not good results for me. And then prior to transplant, I'm still involved in some kind of studies. I just have no idea which ones. I just say yes, and we take blood, and they do whatever they need to do, and we just agree to it.
Awesome, awesome. We have a hand raised. Janet, are you able to unmute? I think you had a question there.
Yes, I can unmute.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions, some of which were just answered very recently. But thank you, Heather, for mentioning the 10%. I have two great nieces that were both born with a rare form, and they spent their first 105 days in the NICU at Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. And they've had, I'm not sure as Kirsten, not that I was happy to hear you were the 10%, but I'm not sure if you've had any surgeries when you were an infant for the intestinal surgeries.
No intestinal surgeries. I've actually been very lucky with the intestinal side of things. That's not been, my lungs have been my bigger issue, but plenty of sinus surgeries.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Was just curious. Yeah, they went through a lot of surgeries and intubations and all that good stuff. So I know, I'm assuming Trikafta certainly not going to be in their future. So I was just wondering, did you also go to public school, Kirsten?
I sure did, yes.
Did, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as, they're just 5 months old now, but as far as hospitalizations and whatnot, you go through, 1, 2, 3 a year from when you were little, as a youngster?
Yeah, I would say about 3 a year is pretty typical. This year's been great other than having COVID because, as RJ said, I haven't really gotten my typical sickness because I'm not around a lot of people. But yeah, I would say 3 is. A few minutes, Bubba. I think 3 is a good estimate, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or anybody else who would like to unmute and ask something before we close it up here? All right. Oh yeah, go for it.
Mom.
Hi, Kirsten's mom.
I'm Sherry, by the way.
Hi.
Hi, Mom.
I don't know if there's other parents or aunts and uncles of young people on the call, but it does occur to me that one of the things that is really important, and I wish I had known before, is what that period of time looks like from the time that your child, if they're lucky enough to go to college or leaves the house and sort of launches into adulthood, how important it is for parents to have support system of other people, either who know the journey or who have dealt with some kind of chronic illness with their children, because and Kirsten she's probably laughing to herself right now, but she could tell you, like, it's a very weird time for parents who are now having to say, okay, my child's in adulthood. It's no longer my primary job to be the primary caretaker. And particularly if they're in a relationship with someone else who now has that role, and how important it is to get that support, because it's not something I ever thought about. And, so you have to learn how to back away and still be involved in the way that you can, but that recognizing that there's going to come a day where CF is not going to be what you live and breathe every single day. So just want to put that out there.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a, very legitimate question and concern. I mean, I can only, speak to what I've seen through my parents, growing up, I think they struggled a little when I left. I think they didn't want me to go. My parents are both medical professionals. My father is a pharmacist and my mother is a physical therapist. So I think they really saw like taking care of me as part of their daily life. They were always there for me. I mean, I think most people say, that my parents were a little over giving to me. My mom would do my laundry when I brought it home from school at college. My mom would cook me food that I'd take back to school when I would go back off after the weekends. So, I mean, I think that they, struggled a little bit when I left the home. And, my wife and I now, we have our own house. We have our own dog. We live in not away from my parents. I mean, my parents still live in Pittsburgh and I still live in the city of Pittsburgh. But I mean, I don't think they're on this call, but they're still there for me. They're very supportive. If they are here, hey, what's up? And I think that the support that they gave me was a big part of their lives. I think they gave a lot of their lives to me, and I will, forever be grateful for everything they did for me. And I don't know if there's any other parents on the line here that can speak to that question and how maybe they felt it handled that kind of thing. I'm muted here.
Well, just one thing I'll add to that too is it occurs to me now that when Kirsten was growing up, their social media wasn't what it is today, right? There was just the kind of the beginning of computers in general. And so there were not, virtual support groups and that kind of thing. I think that parents who are having kids now are, sort of going into a whole different experience than maybe parents of kids who are of adults. So that might change things, that might be different.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. I don't think we have anything else unless I missed it. So at this point, I would obviously like to thank everyone for joining us. I'd like to thank all of the panelists, especially for joining us and sharing everything that everyone was so willing to share. I think being open, is a big part of who we all seem to be that have decided to join here. I thank everybody for their questions, and I just wanted to have everybody, kind of give a little wrap up here. RJ, if you want to start us off, just any additional thoughts, anything you'd like to pass along, anything you'd like to end with here before we call it a night.
Yeah, thank you for attending. Thank you for all of the great questions. I think you'll find advocates in all of us. So I'm certainly able and willing to keep the conversation going. I'd kindly defer to the folks at the foundation to organize these. But I think it was always great. It was always great meeting new CF folks and getting reacquainted with previous friends. So I add you all on Facebook. Deal with it.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for having us. This is my first panel with the CFF. It's been great connecting with Jenny and others through Jenny. And thank you all for your questions. They were very thoughtful.
I agree with everybody said. It was great meeting everybody. Thanks for having us. My first panel as well, even though I've been involved with the CF Foundation for a long time.
So for me, just in closing, obviously thank you all for, attending here tonight and dealing with us and listening to us and putting up with us in some cases if you had to. Thank you all for your interest, in getting to hear from us and hopefully learn a little something from us that you can take home and well, I guess you're probably all at home because we're on the computer. So you can take along with you in the future and utilize it in whatever way that you might, feel is best. And just from the standpoint here of the discussion, I'm just gonna, read here so that the local team with the Western Pennsylvania chapters attempting to make like panel discussions like these more of a regular occurrence. So you will be getting a survey sent along as well as the recording of this session. And if you do have time to, answer that survey, I know all the folks at the foundation would be super appreciative to hear back from you and how this went, what you learned, and potentially, other topics and themes that you might be interested in hearing in future sessions. We hope to meet up again as a group on this virtual setting and do this with some other folks and talk about some other things and really get all the perspectives that we can. And again, we cannot thank you enough for all you have done with your interest here. And we cannot thank the CF Foundation enough for putting this type of event together. Thank you to Jenny, who is our, man behind the curtain per se here, who has helped us put this all together and sent me lots of messages. And we couldn't be more thankful for her. So thank you, Jenny. Thank you to CF Foundation.